Welcome back, Cans, and anybody else who's here listening. And we have overcome our technical difficulties. So, technology and the modern world is a great thing, because now I am connected to a wonderful gentleman called Brendan D. Murphy, who has written an amazing book. I went to Mexico to a conference fairly recently, and Brendan was a guest speaker there. And I am quite embarrassed, as I told him before, that I hadn't really come across a lot of his work before, because the presentation he gave was absolutely astounding. And a lot of my work focuses on something called the placebo effect. And the placebo effect is a very strange thing that's maybe related to a kind of another worldly, kind of esoteric thing that goes on. So I've looked fairly deeply into that, and when I heard Brendan talk about some of the information and the research he's done, it was absolutely mind-blowing. So Brendan, all the way from Mexico, how are you this morning, my friend?
Pretty good, mate. Pretty good. It's good to chat again, buddy.
Excellent, and you're coming through nice and clear in my headphones, so I think we might have a fairly glitch-free interview. Listen, please tell us about your book. And as a bit of a compliment to you, I was talking to somebody at the conference, and he said to me that it was one of the best books he had ever read.
Yeah, well, that's kind of what I'm going for when I write. I'm not a volume guy. I'm a once in a decade kind of guy at this point. So, yeah, that book was the product of, I guess, from when I woke up, when I had my spiritual awakening 20 years ago. That set me on the path of just being insatiably curious about, the nature of reality and consciousness.
Recording in progress.
What's it all about? Why are we here? What is the meaning of it all? And, I went deep into the mystical and the paranormal, and, I wanted to bridge the world of the spiritual with the world of the scientific, and see, where they supported each other. And, it turns out there's actually a massive amount of mutual support if you, make the time to look. But I say people, 10,000 hours of study, because that's what's packed into that book, is 10,000 hours of experience and research.
How many years is that? And listen, just for anybody else who's just tuned in a little bit late, I'm live with Brendan D. Murphy, all the way from Mexico, who is an author who breaks down a lot of information relating to the spiritual world and how it affects us in real life. And 10,000 hours of work, that's absolutely incredible. So are we talking about a kind of lifelong journey, or did you take breaks, or did you just get up and running and just get into it over a few years? What was your journey to get to there?
Yeah, I mean, I was triggered by a book called The Holographic Universe. That was quite a few people know about it, and that was my point of awakening, my jumping off point, because it awoke that curiosity and that hunger to learn more, and it put me on my path. I think this is the path I was supposed to be on. This has been my life's focus for the last 20 years since I read that book. So there's really, for me, this is it is my, if you like, my life's work. And that was the trigger point. So I just wanted to build on that picture and understand it more, and be able to actually share, my take on that in my work. So don't know if I'm answering your question,
Absolutely,
but that's kind of
in
a nutshell version. So I've been doing it for 20 years.
And who was the author of that book again?
Michael Talbot. He was a physicist. He died some time ago.
And what roughly, if you can just give us a rough idea of the premise of the book, and then how that relates to the work that you just found yourself dropped into.
Well, his thesis was basically that the nature of reality, or the universe that we live in, is that it's basically a projected hologram, and it emerges from if you like, a foundation that has nothing to do with space or time as we know it. So in essence, that's kind of a nutshell version of it. So underlying the hologram is this kind of infinite field of interconnectedness, consciousness. And that projects the illusion that we call reality. And so that's kind of where I took that idea and ran with it and developed it. And, I found it stands up pretty well.
So for those of us who probably haven't really had a look at that before, so I've got to be aware of my audience, who I'm sure are absolutely an incredibly amazing bunch. But so what does that mean so I'm driving in my car, I don't know anything about the placebo effect, and I hear somebody like yourself tell me it's a hologram out there. What am I to make of that? I can see stuff around me, I can feel things, I can touch things. How is there any sanity in thinking that I'm in a hologram? Explain that to me just in an ABC way, please.
Well, I guess, some of the key points about the hologram, if you take a holographic image and you fracture it or break it into pieces, you end up with the entire image in each fragment or piece of the. So if you picture it like a mirror, say, if you shatter a normal mirror, you end up with fragments of the image in each, a piece of the image in each fragment. But if you shatter a hologram, a holographic image, you end up with an entire complete picture of the whole image in each shattered piece of it. So the whole contains, each part contains the information of the whole, which is, it turns out that actually applies to, as far as, the nature of the paranormal and parapsychology, all this research, mysticism, those perspectives actually support that idea that, everything is fundamentally interconnected. Everything emerges from a common ground that is, that has nothing to do with space and time. So we're all fundamentally connected in ways that our normal sort of day-to-day sensory system doesn't typically reveal to us.
So when we're talking about examples of maybe me having precognition or thinking I can see or feel or hear something on the other side of the world, and somebody else is saying, well, that's impossible, there's no radio waves, or there's no wires connected, or no screens, or there's no way we can do that, are you suggesting that, and we have some, as you know, some evidence with quantum physics to suggest this, that there is an entanglement, there is a link up that absolutely takes time and space out of the equation? And I'm just reading between the lines of what you're saying. You're actually saying that for some of these more mystical things like healing or like telekinesis, I don't know, maybe telepathy, the quantum structure gives us enough room to suggest that stuff is possible. Would that be, am I saying that in any way correctly, or what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, pretty much. The ground of reality has nothing to do with, it doesn't contain the properties of space. It doesn't contain the properties of time. These are things that the human physiological sensory system, it manufactures the perception of those things, but they're not actually intrinsic properties of the foundational nature of reality. So if you imagine that we swim in an ocean, we're like fish in an ocean, and the ocean is full of information, so bits of data, and it is also a field of consciousness, and you can't actually separate those two things, so you have to kind of mention them in the same breath. So it's information and tied up with consciousness, and you need the consciousness to make the information mean anything, or perceive the information to begin with. So we live in this field of information, and that is what projects the hologram of time and space. But the field itself doesn't have time or space. These are the parameters that it's kind of like imagining into being, if you like, and we then project ourselves into the reality where these little human avatar suits, and we feel like we're in space and we're experiencing the flow of time. But the foundational nature of reality, if you go into the field and penetrate into the field and have like a mystical experience, you find out that those things don't actually exist at that more foundational level.
So I'm getting up in the morning, I'm having my toast, and my bills are due, and I'm getting to work. What the hell does this have to do with me? My mortgage is a little bit late. I've just had an argument with the missus. I'm trying to get the kids out to school. They're just pulling each other's hair out. Their clothes are messed, and I'm feeling a bit stressed. What can I do with this? Is it just these bloody people sitting around writing books? Are you wasting your time with this, or can I use any of this?
I think, for me,
Tough question
there. I'm a pragmatist by nature. I always want to know why it's useful, how it applies. And, I think what we can take away from all that, the research in those different realms, from quantum mechanics into the parapsychological, is that reality is a co-creative process. It's a creative process. The fact that you open your eyes and perceive and process information is actually a creative thing. And so we're in this constant interrelationship between us as a human avatar and the information field, and we have the ability to engage with it creatively and interactively. So we're not just like these little skin suit islands that a lot of people seem to think we are. We are emergent phenomena projected by the hologram, projected from the deeper level that underlies the hologram. And when we understand that we're literally connected to everything, then you end up with a whole other realm of creative possibilities to play in. You can influence the way that your life operates. You can influence using the power of the mind. I mean, this is, I don't want to get into like the superficial sort of law of attraction stuff, but that there is a level of validity to it, because we are creative, and the ground of reality, there's a two-way street there between, the information flow from us into the field and the field to us. So we can we can create outcomes using nothing more than a change of perception, a change of mind, a change of focus.
I love where this is going. So the kids have finally got in the car after screaming at each other, and I'm late for work, and I've got a bit of a hangover because I've had a few beers last night, and I'm looking across the road, and Jimmy's got the big house and the nice gates, and he's slowly strolling out to his Mercedes, and my car's having trouble starting, and I'm shaking my head, and I'm thinking, holy cow, Jimmy is one lucky bugger. Well, I guess, he just had everything thrown at him in the right way, and I can never get a break. What do you see in that scenario?
Yeah, I mean, the story that you tell yourself is a reflection of your underlying belief system, and your belief system is what essentially, on two levels, it creates your perception of your experience, but it also attracts your experience at the same time. So there's two layers to that, really. Your belief system is the foundational place where you are starting, whether you realize it or not, where you are starting to create your experience, and then belief is creative in itself, and it alters your perception. It colors your perception. So if you walk around feeling like you're a victim, and then if that is your core identity, then that is the way that you interpret all information that comes to you. So that is going to then create a very crappy experience for you in the day to day, and you're going to feel like, jealous of Jimmy's car next door. You're going to feel like you'll never be able to afford that car because that's not part of, that would violate your core sense of self and identity. So you then need to start reprogramming yourself at a fundamental level and breaking down beliefs that are holding you in that pattern, because you get stuck in a pattern. It's very easy to get stuck in that pattern based on your belief system, and the beliefs that are core beliefs operate at a very non-conscious level, so they can be very difficult for people to then recognize and deal with and replace them with something more conducive.
I'm live on the radio with Brendan D. Murphy this morning. Brendan is from Melbourne originally, and he's written the most amazing book about, I guess, the structure of reality, and we're actually talking about that. And I'm loving where this conversation is going, because it's a Monday morning. So many people, in actual fact, will probably be living that situation that I just described of dragging themselves out of bed, getting to work first thing in the morning, not having control over their lives, not being able to pay the bills, just having that stress. And we've just started entering that area where I want to pick Brendan's brains about now how we can use this idea that, reality is very subjective. It's not necessarily what we see. These screens, these things around us, yeah, it all feels really very real. But I think, Brendan, where you're taking this conversation, which I'm really liking, is the area of maybe using your thoughts and your mental power to be able to actually change your reality, to bring things towards you, to attract good things in your life. So for the person out there who just is really listening to this kind of information for the first time, where do you start with something like that? I guess knowledge is the first tenet, is understanding that it's possible.
Yeah, and I guess there's 1,000 different ways that people can go down that road. I wouldn't necessarily say there's one way that's better than the others. The main thing is, I think, when you recognize that you're in a pattern of life experience that you don't like, that is then your opportunity to take radical responsibility for that, because you are, there's no avoiding the fact that we are literally creating our personal reality at a very deep level and every other level. So we take responsibility and we go, okay, well, what is it that's the belief system that is operating in me? Because this is like a software program that's running your reality and programming your reality. So what is the belief system in me, in my subconscious or consciousness, whatever, that is then correlated with this? What is manifesting this? What am I running here that is creating this crappy limited experience? And then you start to, tap into your toolbox of 1,001 different ways of reprogramming your belief system, which is a whole other thing. People have all sorts of ways of doing that, from hypnosis to EFT, different forms of EFT, it goes on and on and on. But you typically you're dealing with the first sort of few years or first 7 years of life, because that's where your core identity, core beliefs are formed. And it can be challenging to get there because that stuff's shunted away into the subconscious parts of the mind and the brain. So it's not necessarily the easiest thing, but when you recognize the patterns around you in your life, you can look at them as an exploded view of your psyche, and that's your experience telling you, okay, here's how you're programming things at the moment. What would you like to start addressing?
Okay, so to kind of break it down, what you're saying is that we are running on almost autopilot, And there's some people out there, Jimmy's driving out in his Mercedes with a great smile on his face and he's going to work and he's thrilled every morning. And then maybe I'm going out in my car and the engine doesn't start. And those programs, it's more than just my environment and I'm having to deal with it. So the first thing I think you're saying is that I, in some way, have attracted that level of lower energy to give me this reality. And then the next thing I think I heard you say is this radical, what was the word, what was the phrase you used there?
A radical responsibility.
Radical responsibility. Excellent. So there's one, on the one hand, I can take responsibility for that. So how do I slip into deciding to take radical responsibility? What's the trigger there? Is it when we hit our lowest point, or is it a kind of we wake up in the morning and decide that we're going to be better? What's your little start there?
I think for a lot of people, from what I've seen, and I would include myself in this, a lot of us have to hit rock bottom, and then we're like, okay, all right, what do I need to do here? Come on, like I'm ready now. I'll do the work. What do I need to do? And just put it in front of me. Give me this. Give me a sign. Give me a hint. Give me something to work with here. And that's a lot of people, because we're creatures of habit, and even when because our habits are a comfort zone in themselves, so it doesn't matter if our experience that results from the belief system is really uncomfortable. If that's our comfort zone, we'll stick with it because that's what we know and that's how we're programmed to be. So we don't like change. We're just inherently against change for the most part. So you want to, if you can do it without having to get to rock bottom, that's great. I would encourage people to make those changes before you hit rock bottom. But then, that's where most people need to go for some reason. It's like the pain has to get intense enough to want us to change. And we see this, on a sociological level, politically, the last 3 years, how much people are willing to tolerate, before we demand and force something better to happen. That's just my observation over the years anyway.
And mine's very similar. You're listening to Awakening Health this morning. My name is Dennis, and I'm talking to Brendan D. Murphy from Mexico. I think it's 5 p.m. or more or less over there, coming up to 5:30 over there in Mexico.
That's it, yeah.
Fantastic. 9:30 here in the morning nearly. And we're talking about how you start to make change. And Brendan's talking about something quite incredible, this challenge to radically change things when you see things that are not working out for you. And my kind of handle is Awakening in Health. So the idea is to get into those deep, I guess, even kind of dark places to get people thinking. But the idea is always to have an option and a solution. And as I said, it is a Monday. We've got a bank holiday coming up tomorrow, so there is a little bit of a break for people. But there's a lot of stress in the world right now. There's a lot of people who are suffering and struggling. We've got doctors dishing out more antidepressants by massive volumes in the last few years than we've ever had before. We have these ideas coming from social media that children can be 20 different genders or sexes and that they're not good enough, and that they have to jump through these hurdles and hoops to get the better job, to compete. And it seems that in a certain way, a lot of people are just bloody unhappy. And I kind of like to think that I'm reasonably happy most of the time. We had a great chat over in Mexico. We had a few jokes and a laugh, and you're very happy and upbeat as well. Is that what part? And I'm probably asking you something the obvious here, really, but I'm presuming that you very much have walked the walk in relation to the information you have. And I know you run some absolutely incredible courses to help transform people's lives. But can you give me some really solid examples of some strange stuff relating to what we're talking about that's happened to you in a positive way or a negative, or in fact information from some people that you've come across personally that is fairly mind-blowing?
Personal experiences that bear on the...
Yeah. That validate
specifically
the discussion.
To do with the manifesting sort of side of things.
Why not? Whatever you think hits, yeah.
Well, I mean, speaking of rock bottom, Amy and I, we've been together. This will be our 10th year. So halfway through 2018, we found our rock bottom, and I was fed up at the time with this situation. For me, for most of my adult life, I just was accustomed to being perpetually broke and just not having money and just scraping by. And we hit this rock bottom point. We had a combined $200 to our names. That was everything we owned. That was all the money we had. And we were like, how are we going to buy food next week? How are we going to put petrol in the car? What the hell's going on here? And so I sent out a very vehement sort of instruction, if you like, to the collective field, the collective consciousness, or, some people would say I sent a message to my higher self or whatever, prayed to God. Or, it doesn't really matter how you frame it. but I sent out a very stern instruction. What is the solution to this situation here? We need a solution. I'm willing to do the work. Just what is it? Put it in front of me. Give me the connection that I can then take action on. And very quickly, very shortly after that, I started to get people reaching out to me going, hey man, you should see this amazing thing that I'm doing, life-changing. And that connected me to the answer. That was the answer. So I got a what was obviously to me quite a direct response to that. And that's just, that was one of the many kind of kooky. I've had a lot of sort of paranormal experiences, but that was like a direct reply to a request.
So with the students you teach and you kind of instruct along those lines, is there any good examples of somebody who's come to you in a less than favorable place and they've applied the information that you have and they've had kind of profound effects?
I mean, I don't ask people about, money or finances and stuff. I get a lot of feedback around just synchronistic events in general, because we're coming into a space where we are operating on the premise that reality is holographic and that everything is interconnected. And when you drop the negatory beliefs, that most people are indoctrinated into, that tells them, scientifically, supposedly, that this, you're not connected to everything and you're just this little meat sack. We know that's wrong, but when you drop those beliefs and then you open up into this wider playing field, all of a sudden you get these amazing synchronistic events, like incredible synchronicities against all odds. And when people, come into work with me and Evolve Yourself, we notice the level of bizarre synchronicities starts to go through the roof. And I found that myself. And, I've had a lot of very amazing sort of pieces of feedback around that type of thing.
Yeah, I had a situation a little while back where financially my flow wasn't really working in any way, shape, or form. And one of my little things that sometimes I do is I have a kind of a meditation where I sit in the future of it having happened. So I'm kind of thanking the universe for my abundance and money in my bank account with no money in my bank account. And I'm kind of thinking to myself, this feels a little bit on the silly side. And within 5 days, I had $10,000 in my bank account.
Wow. Hey, that's exactly it. And that's exactly, it can be as simple as that. And, you mentioned $10,000 and yep. I just read one of Bruce Moen's books, and he was talking about an experience where he was writing, he wanted free time on his hands so he could finish writing this book he was writing about his afterlife explorations. And he wanted $10,000 from a publisher. He wanted a $10,000 advance so he could just put everything else aside and just work on the book. And he has this exercise that he runs through. It's like a visualization. I won't, try to detail it. It's take a bit too long, but it's fairly straightforward in essence. And he visualized this, he put the signal out, if you like, expanded his aura out around the entire planet, out into the solar system, galaxy, et cetera, et cetera. And very quickly after, he manifested within days the exact amount of $10,000 to then allow him to finish writing the book. And it's following on from that exercise. And it doesn't necessarily have to be this technique or that technique. Like you use your method, and that was effective. And he used his method, that was effective. I put out a demand, that was effective.
And so for some people listening here who are in kind of adverse situations, when your mood is down, you obviously have some fairly critical self-talk, and for some of those people who are saying, oh wow, that lucky person, that can never happen to me, I'm never lucky, how would you try and get some of those people to try and shift from that place to a place where they can start attracting this incredible energy?
I think the first and foremost thing is to actually become not mindful and self-aware that you're doing that, and that is your self-talk and that is your story, because that is a reflection of your more deeply seated belief system, which needs to be addressed. And so you want to stop reaffirming that and reiterating it and reifying it by holding those thoughts and those thought patterns and saying the words, but you also have to find a way to address the belief system. And one of the recent approaches that I found, again from Bruce Moen, was to simply address the part of your psyche that is holding a particular belief for you, because that part of your psyche, again, probably originates from the first 7 years of your life. And it's holding the belief because of experiences that it's been through. And that was its attempt to adapt with and cope with the situation back then. The problem is it's essentially stuck in time, and it's holding on to that belief system, which is no longer supporting you in the direction you want to go. So you can actually hold a dialogue with this part of your psyche and essentially give it new instructions. Like, I appreciate you for holding this belief for me. I get that you were doing your job, and now I really need you to let go of it. And I'm going to give you this new instruction. Your job now is to be holding this belief because this is the direction we want to go. Kind of very simplistic explanation of it.
I like that a lot, Brendan. And the other thing that kind of comes to mind as you're talking, and we actually did specifically say this, that sometimes the most dramatic changes do happen when you're hitting rock bottom. And what I think you would suggest, and I'd certainly suggest this to anybody who is going through a really, really bad time, this could be a monumental time to instigate the perfect change that can bring you those things that you really want. What would you think if I said that?
Sorry, could you just repeat the last bit,
Sure,
mate?
absolutely. So for anybody listening to this show who is really struggling, really going through a bad time, feeling that they are rock bottom, that could be absolutely the perfect place to be right now in order to get what you want.
It's the only place for you to be, because that's where you are. And so there's, if you like, if you listen to Carl, what's his name? I'm having a mental blank. Carl, who does this NLP work, fantastic NLP practitioner. And he'll tell you that, you are exactly where you have exactly what you want, because those parts of your psyche that we were just alluding to, they are responsible for creating the situation that you're in. So these parts of your psyche actually have what they want already. You already have what you want. It's just that, you've got like a 3-year-old version of you running the show in the background subconsciously. And it has what it wants in terms of feeling safe or surviving and what have you. And there's, the reptilian part of the brain, the limbic system, they have a very primitive way of looking at the world. And the most primitive parts of the brain just look at the world and go, okay, this situation that I'm in, did I die? Am I dead? No, I'm not dead. Okay, therefore, whatever I'm doing, whatever is happening around me is a successful survival strategy. And then it takes that and it runs forward into the rest of your life as an adult with that. So you got to reprogram all that stuff. But I know I'm getting off track. You've got to.
It's good.
You can only work from where you're at right now. And where we were at when we were at our most uncomfortable was to choose to do the work that needed to be done in addressing belief systems, addressing what was the action that needed to be taken, and moving forward, what was the mindset and the belief system that would support us to continue to sustainably go in the direction we wanted to go to create the kind of life that we wanted to experience. Because that's all it is. You're just programming an experience. But for most of us, it's going to take some concerted effort. It's not necessarily a quick fix, but if you stay in the game and you keep persisting with it and keep on top of your self-development, the reprogramming of the psyche, you will notice that you start to manifest things that support you in the direction you're wanting to go.
Absolutely. And I did a lot of extensive work in mental health, and the observation that I've made over the years is very similar, that change, if you're expecting abundance, if you're expecting financial abundance, love, whatever you want, the change actually has to start inside. And the more sometimes that we're struggling and we're pushing and we're trying to do better at work or trying to get that contract or trying to make that relationship work, in actual fact, the more we're pushing it away. And sometimes doing that internal work, there's almost a magnetism with that energy to actually, and a thing I quite like, it's by Florence Shin, I think you'd be probably familiar with her work, is the idea that the universe wants to help us. It's waiting, it's sitting there with this abundance outside, and it's us that's blocking that.
Yeah, and you're right. We are literally, we're in a holographic projection that exists inside infinity. There's no substance or solidity to what we're experiencing here, other than our perception tells us that it's solid when it's actually, we know it's not. But we're inside a complete illusion. It's basically a dreamscape. And it's born of a field of infinite potentiality, infinite power, infinite possibility. So why do we keep placing limits on what's possible here? It's completely counterproductive. It's completely self-defeating. There's no, if you can get yourself to the point of being out of the stupid, ridiculous paradigm of materialism and move into something we could call a spiritual kind of awakening, if you can get there, then you've got to start grappling with infinity. And infinity doesn't have limits. So why do we keep programming limits into this experience? This is the transition we got to start making.
Absolutely, yeah. There's an old saying, 2 men behind bars. One looks down, sees mud. The other looks up, sees stars. And I think that's a really powerful metaphor for having an awareness about your current situation. And, maybe, again, I could have all sorts of bills. I might have, things happening in my love life and whatnot. But when I'm looking around, it is raining outside, but it's a beautiful day. I'm blessed to be here talking to you. I'm blessed to be in this studio, have these opportunities to share this information. And the key, one of those keys for me is the power of gratitude in starting this shift of energy and starting to pull things towards you.
100%, 100%, brother. And I'm glad you mentioned that, because that's key. That's the energy that you, or the frequency that you want to embody, because ultimately we exist in this frequency domain, this matrix of frequency, and it is true that like attracts like. So there's multiple levels to this, but whatever it is that your experience that you want to create, you have to then carry that frequency that matches that. And that's how you can then begin to effortlessly pull that experience towards you, instead of having to expend effort and energy. If you embody the frequency, then reality automatically responds to that. So that interconnectedness in the matrix instantly recognizes, okay, this guy's over here on this frequency now, boom, here's the experience or the person or the whatever that matches that, and it brings them together.
Awesome, lovely explanation. So we're coming to the close of this little Zoom call here. So I'm going to reconnect with you on this. And while we're working out these technical difficulties or challenges, which I'm obviously grateful for, we are going to chuck a song on for the lovely people listening out there. Brendan Murphy from Mexico talking about, I guess, how reality is constructed. And you're listening to Awakening in Health. For Awakening in Health, the idea is to try and get people from a sick state to a state of better health. And what we were discussing with Brendan up until now was how we can start manifesting some of that better flow, some of that better energy. It's the start of a week. It's a Monday morning. People have got lots of stress, got lots of social things going wrong in their life. Maybe they don't have enough money. Maybe they're living day to day from paycheck to paycheck. And one of the things that Brendan does is he teaches people how to change that energy around. And we've got to the place in the conversation where we're talking about that being an inside job. That journey has to start on the inside. And Brendan talked about something called radical acceptance. And that means stop running away from your problems. It means maybe having to sit down, maybe having to look at yourself, maybe seeing how things are going on, and then deciding to take those huge steps in making that dramatic change in your life. And as Brendan pointed out in his conversation, he was at rock bottom, at a low point, and now he's in a place just from changing that energy where he is very successful. He's got a beautiful family. He's doing quite well overall. He still hasn't returned to this chat room, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to put another song on and we can see if we can get him back. If not, it's coming close to the end of the hour. It is exactly 9:51 and we may close out, but I'll have a few more little things to say before it's 10 o'clock. Monday morning. Welcome back to Awakening in Health this lovely Monday morning here. The rain is pouring down outside and I have got the amazing Brendan D. Murphy back on the line live from Mexico. And during the break, while the song was playing, we were just talking about Brendan. And I think, did you say that you really miss getting up to work, grafting every day? You said that was a distant memory which you just want to get back to and kind of being comfortable and happy. Is it suiting you? Or tell us more about that. And while you do, because we only got about 5 minutes left, I really want to hear about how people can find you, where they can find you, and just give us some more information on that.
Yeah, man. Well, the 40-hour work week, I never really got that familiar with it, to be totally honest with you. But yeah, so if people are wanting to sort of connect in more deeply with my work, the way to get the book would be to go to brendandmurphy.com/TGI. TGI is for the Grand Illusion. They can follow me on Substack. I've got a free blog there. I've got the Truthiversity, which is where I put all my premium content. It's for members only. So you can go and check out more information about the Truthiversity at truthiversity.com. It's like university, but Truthiversity. Yeah, what else? I'm on Instagram and Facebook and all that sort of, the usual channels.
I saw, and again, I've been having a little pour through it, but you've got some bloody interesting stuff on YouTube. Some fantastic interviews and a huge range of discussions. Can you tell some of the listeners some of the range of topics that kind of, I guess, float your boat or that you like to talk about?
Yeah, I mean, I'm obviously, as you know, I'm very interested in the health arena, how health actually works, how illness actually works. I'm very interested in alternative history, the suppressed history that's been deliberately kept out of mainstream. And anything esoteric in general, paranormal, nature of reality, anything that ties into those types of subjects, all over it.
So I had a little bit of a rant last week about my dislike of the pharmaceutical industry. And when I heard you presenting in Mexico, I know that's something that you're very, very well up on. And, you talked about things like the Flexner report and a few different things like that. So I tend to really align in relation to how I perceive health. I think very similarly along the lines that you consider health. Again, we got a few more minutes left to kind of fill in. But did you see through this kind of facade and this kind of scam right off the bat, or did something shock you to open your eyes?
As far as
seeing the health, the structure of the health system, as in maybe not working for us. In actual fact, quite the opposite.
Yeah, I don't know when that happened. It was quite a long time ago. I think that was probably, when I had the spiritual awakening first, and then I had the kind of like geopolitical awakening, which followed shortly after. And that was where I started to get more into the power structure that runs the planet and that has set up these types of systems. And that's where you start finding out about the Rockefellers and the Carnegies and these dynasties that have, set up this medical system, which is really just a business model to generate massive amounts of money and social control and things. So, but yeah, I started learning about that a while back.
Surely that's a conspiracy.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny, when people say something like that, it's a conspiracy. They have had their language manipulated for so long that words don't mean what they are supposed to mean anymore. So when someone says a conspiracy is just an agreement between people that doesn't get broadcast into the public. Really, it's a secret agreement, and that happens all the time. People have conversations behind closed doors. Powerful people have conversations about the millions of peons that they want to manipulate or control, or wring as many dollars out of them as possible. It's nothing weird or unusual. I mean, they've got secret societies all around the world. I mean, we could go deep into that, but yeah.
That could be a very interesting conversation for next time around. So essentially what you're saying is that, that we shouldn't be shocked if we have these absolutely gigantic multi-corporate companies who are not interested in our health, but rather interested in making profits.
No, exactly. And a corporation that has like a legal mandate, an obligation to make a profit. And that's its sole purpose. For a corporation, one of these dead legal entities, that is what it does. It has to make a profit no matter what, regardless of the damage, the destruction, it doesn't matter. So that's how they function. They're sociopathic entities, and that's what we see.
So basically, we gotta take notice of where we are getting our information from and have a critical eye on things. It's coming right up to the hour of 10 a.m. Brendan D. Murphy, it has been an absolute pleasure talking to you this morning.
Likewise, mate. All I can say is thanks for having me. And yeah, hopefully we can do it again sometime.
You have an amazing day.
Likewise.
Thank you very much, everybody, for listening to Awakening Health. You can find me coming back next Monday at the same time, and have a fantastic week.